Welcome to the Business and Marketing Podcast That Makes Sense, the podcast dedicated to helping owners and founders gain clarity, untangle complexity, and eliminate the guesswork in running their business.
In each episode, we'll dive into business messaging and methods, clearing the unclear and turning confusion into specific, actionable solutions. We'll tackle and make sense of the challenges we all face, offering insights and strategies from right alongside you.
Our goal is to empower you to be the sense maker, giving you the tools to accelerate your business with clarity and confidence. Grow or go? Am I the unclear in my business? That's what we're going to be thinking about today. So as you might remember, in the last episode, we left introducing this idea of a growth mindset. And so today we want to really unpack what we mean by that and what we mean by grow or go. Daria, do you want to dive straight in with us? What do we mean by grow or go?
Grow or go basically was a term that I developed over the years when I was learning consultancy and found myself in challenging situations where I'd be going into a call and feeling inadequate or feeling not unworthy, but unqualified, really, to do what I was doing, which wasn't the case. I had achieved my MBA and I'd been doing this for some time, and I'd been in business most of my life, but I still felt like there was internal hindrance to me doing stuff that I'd never done before. And pushing my limits so that I could take new ground. Rather than having the same year over and over again, I could live a new year every year. And I realized that for some time I'd been in that place of living the same year over and over again, saying one day I'm going to do this, or one day I'll do that, or one day I'll do the next thing. And it became a mantra every year. And you kind of make yourself feel better for saying it, because you're saying it. You feel like you're doing something about it by just saying it. But I realized that I wasn't growing. And the thought occurred to me, if I don't grow, this consultancy is going to go. I'm going to get left behind in myself and with the people that I'm working with. I have to grow, and I have to keep on growing, and I have to make sure that I'm putting myself in a position where I've got life and lessons to share with the people around me. So grow or go. And that became a mantra. I'd be sitting in a call and I'd be saying to somebody, we need to understand your financials. And they'd be saying, but why? And I'd realize, if you don't grow on this, you're going to go. In relationships, people would be saying to me, so-and-so is this or that or the next thing. And I became aware that both parties had to grow or this relationship was going to go. So it's really become a mantra in SenseMaker, and all the sense makers that work with us know it and use it and apply it. Grow or go.
And I think that if I had to put a label to it, if I had to articulate a label for it in my own experience, I would call it, I use it as a sense check, right? It's my sense check. And people are often, when they hear that we work together as closely as we do, they're often surprised that we get on as well as we do and that we don't really argue. And we have disagreements sometimes, but we don't really argue. And I would say that the source of one of the biggest pieces of tension that might occur between us is really a non-tension in a way, and it's mostly down to this sense check that happens with me with this idea of grow or go. And so there's been so many scenarios. I mean, I'm sure you can remember a few where I've been frustrated at something you've challenged me with, because I know that what you're saying is the right answer, but I don't want to hear it, because
Yes.
I know it's the right answer, and it's a lot of effort, and it's out of my comfort zone, and it's not in alignment with who I believe I am at that point in time. And so it's really challenging to shift myself out of this place of being a victim and wanting the difficult thing to disappear, because that would be the easier option, and accepting that, as we said in the last episode, the obstacle is the way, and that's what I'm going to need to tackle if I want to move forward.
Yes.
And so I use it on myself as this sense check to say, look, right, how badly do I want my reason for starting? And
Yes.
am I going to let this thing derail me?
Yes, it is. We're in a place of comfortable uncomfortability,
Yeah.
where we are happy to, we're unhappy with where we are, but we're unhappy with the thought of making the effort to move. And so you're right, it does become a bit of a victim thing. And I can remember those occasions. I can remember occasions even as a little boy. You'd say to me, Dad, I know that you're right, but I don't want to do this. and just give me time to get my flesh under control. I can remember you saying to me on one occasion, this little kid saying to me, Dad, this is my flesh. Just give me some time and let me get my flesh under control. And I think it's a natural defense mechanism because somehow I'm diminished or I'm somehow made less by admitting that I don't know and that I've got to grow. And that's such a sad thing because it's not true. Admitting that I don't know is actually a great
Strength.
thing, and it's an exciting thing because it opens up the doors of possibility.
And this is something, this is a way of thinking and being and doing that permeates our entire worlds, our families outside of SenseMaker. It's not just something we do at work, it's how we view the world. And I want to encourage anybody listening with that idea that this isn't just something that you should bring to your professional life. This is something that sits outside that. And so the reason I say that is Sienna, for those that don't know, my daughter, she's 9, she would refer to that idea of my flesh as my outside self. And I've covered that kind of concept in different places, but it's the same thing. As soon as we become aware that our outside self has these desires that aren't always helpful, we can start keeping an eye out for them and using this sense check to keep us on the path, tackling those obstacles and motivated towards our goal.
I think it's also helped me a lot to evaluate the value of the goal,
Mm,
the effort I'm going to make to get to where I want to go, bigger than the value that I attach to the achievement of the goal. And that's really, yeah, very challenging for me.
mm,
Uh, because it's not easy, and it does take effort, and it does take pain. And I remember when I was studying for my MBA, I could hear you guys outside in the pool playing in the summer sun, and I'd be sat at the dining room table with my post-it notes and my essays and my learning happening.
yeah.
But I knew the thing that motivated me was that I knew that to get us to where I wanted us to be, that is a price I was going to pay. I had to grow, or else the opportunity to build something for all of us would go. And so, yeah, you're right. It is a mantra in our household, in our family. We say it to each other. We remind each other frequently, grow or go. It's going to grow or it's going to go. And I'm going to grow or it's going to go. And it's been really, actually just thinking it through like this,
Yeah.
just strikes me how much of a foundation that is in our lives.
That's the same with me. So, I mean, obviously, there's a good level of preparation that goes into these episodes, but until we start having these conversations, I didn't realize how much it actually exists in our world around us. Even when I don't think I'm doing it deliberately, it's there. And so, I wanted to ask you this because some people might be listening to this and they might feel as though accepting the go option is failure instead of choosing to grow. Interested to hear what you think. I don't, on reflection and sort of in real time in this conversation, I don't think that it's always failure. What are your
No,
thoughts?
no. Nelson Mandela said, I don't win or lose, I win or learn. And I think that sometimes there is a place where to stay and try to grow can be counterproductive. And I've got to think it through and make a determined choice. Am I going to go? Because staying is not going to cause me to grow. It's going to become destructive and ruinous in my life. And so I would encourage anybody that there's no absolute here in the sense of building my life and my business. There's no absolutes. There's no dead straight lines. There's no exact proportion. Keith Cunningham says over and over again, you're playing this game of tennis on a court that's moving around, and the lines are coming and going, and the net's changing height and disappearing and coming back, and your racket is changing shape and form, and the umpire is moving, and the rules are changing all the time, and we're playing our game of life in this like highly mobile environment. And so we need to be responding to the good sense of what's going on around us. And that's why the other parts of the breakout program are so important. I've got to be learning. I've got to be growing my knowledge. I've got to be growing my ability to ask questions. I've got to be growing those fundamental skills so that I can determine whether, in fact, a situation that I'm in is good for me or not. If it's not good for me, then go. If it's good for me, or it's going to be difficult but become good for me, then grow.
And it becomes more about sometimes it's as much about getting clear on what I don't want, like you said a moment ago. How serious am I about my reason for starting, about the what I thought was the goal?
Yes.
Sometimes once we start progressing down that road, we actually can become aware of this isn't the reality I thought it was going to be, and our priorities shift, our desires shift, and our idea of our goal shifts or clarifies. And
Yes.
so sometimes go is actually the right option.
It is. And in terms of our application of the principle in business, I think it not only has an impact on the decisions I make about myself and the choices I make about myself and my learning and the direction of the business and the conversations that you and I have, or I might have with your mum, or whatever the case may be. But it also, as we grow in our understanding of this principle, we realize that sometimes, like we might have customers that should go because
Mhm.
they're not causing us to grow. Do you know? So it's not only a decision that I make about me, about my life, about my choices, about my business, but it can be a decision I make about the people that I'm involved with and that I relate to. And I've been in situations where patently the person that I'm working with is not going to grow. And there's no fulfillment in that for me. There's no sense of satisfaction or joy. Well, then I need to have the courage to say, I need this money for argument's sake, but I'm not going to put up with this behavior. And so this relationship has got to go, and I'm going to make the decision to move away from the client or the person that I'm working with.
I think fundamentally what guides that is, and we'll unpack this in future episodes, but knowing what your anchor is, and
Yes,
your why, your reason for doing, your reason for being, and that is something that we'll constantly be measuring against. What is my purpose, and is that purpose positively impacting the lives of other people, and
yes,
am I getting a sense of fulfillment from that? There has to be that balance. And so, if we had to sort of summarize this idea of a growth mindset, it would be the ability to see possibility in
yes,
situations, being willing to learn and see failure as an opportunity for growth,
absolutely.
and realizing that there are actually no limits, and change is possible if we're willing to try.
Yes.
Which leads me to a question that I think a lot of people might be asking, and that is, how do I identify the mindset that I've got? How do I know if I've got a growth mindset or if I've got a fixed mindset?
Well, the first thing I've got to do is get knowledge.
Mm.
And I can't remember her name, but she wrote the book Mindset.
Carol Dweck.
Carol Dweck. Yeah, that's right. She wrote the book Mindset. And in my life, that was a changer, a game changer. Absolute 100% game changer. If you get nothing out of this podcast or any other podcast that we do, if you get nothing out of working with us or not working with us, the book Mindset by Carol
Carol Dweck. Yeah.
is well worth reading. And she explains clearly how your mindset affects your life, how a growth mindset works, how a fixed mindset works, and the impact that can have. And I can remember listening to it in the car, and I sat at a traffic light, and she made a statement about growth mindset and fixed mindset. And I actually experienced an adrenaline rush because I thought, I sensed, I'm looking at myself. She's talking to me about my mindset, and that was amazing. And I'd done loads of stuff. I wasn't in a position of failure or substandard living or success or whatever the case. I was doing well, but to get my mindset right, greased the wheels,
Yeah.
if you like, and really got me going. So there's no other way of doing this. If you want to learn about mindset, get a book, get reading, get listening. If you can't read or don't enjoy reading, listen to it on audiobook. It's available on audiobook. And um, make notes and think about it and ask the question, how can I apply this to myself, and how does it apply to me? Don't worry about anyone else around you. Don't think about who else around you's got fixed mindsets or whatever the case may be. You got to deal with yourself,
Yeah.
capital S, first.
And I think that those books and recommendations are great because they form part of our information, right? content, any content, and this is a valuable thought to sort of keep in our minds. Any content that we consume is information. It's forming us inwardly. We have to be so careful about what we're consuming because information will impact, shape or define or move or shift our beliefs. Our beliefs determine our outlook, and our outlook determines our actions. And so this is really important, and so that's an input, those books. But there might be something that we could do, or look at in ourselves, that expresses itself when we're in certain situations. For example, when I make a mistake, how do I react? So going back to the marathon story for myself, when I failed at that, how did I react? I beat myself up a bit. I was very disappointed. But ultimately, and I'm thinking about this in real time, I've not thought about it like this since it happened. But ultimately, I feel as though I turned it into a learning opportunity very quickly.
Yeah.
And that suggests to me that there was a growth mindset operating there. I
Yes.
wanted to take the failure and look for the lesson and apply that. So identify, clarify, learn, apply. You can see it coming through again. Do I see mistakes as a reason to give up? If I do, that's probably a closed mindset. And so what are some of the things that we can do to begin to change our mindset? If we feel like it's not where we want it to be, how can we begin to change our mindset and get it to this place where we have a growth mindset?
I think that in my experience, I I realized that I needed to practice it. I needed to practice it. I needed to practice my response to situations. I needed to practice the way I spoke to people, the way I approached my life. And so, um, when people ask me, "How are you?" whatever I'm feeling, because 9 times out of 10 people aren't really interested. It's just a greeting, you know. I remember when I came to this country, we lived in the Midlands, and they got a really crazy accent up there. And I was walking up the road one day, and I saw a fellow walking towards me. I was taking you to school at the time, and he, as I walked up past him, he said, "You're all right," like this, and I said, "Yes, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?" And he was gone. And I subsequently learned that "you're all right" means "are you all right?" And the expectation is zero of any kind of an answer. So you don't have this, you don't have a problem with that, you know. So you've got to. I don't know what got me onto that thought, but um, I think I can start to catch myself doing things right. I can start to practice being right and practice being right-minded about things. And so when people ask me, "How are you doing, Dario?" I'll tell them, "I'm stunning. I'm
Mm.
fine. I'm on top of the world. I'm really doing well." But you've got some issues in your life. I've got issues in my life, but I'm thankful that they're not worse than they could be. You know, I know people that are much worse off than I am, and I'm grateful. And I think part of a growth mindset, the initiation of a growth mindset, is start to develop a mentality of thankfulness when things aren't going my way, because the reason they're not going my way is that I've got something to learn.
That's interesting, and something that I always like to think about. I love an analogy. I feel like they're the toolkit of communicating a point that you want to make. And so I often think about the idea that an aircraft never flies perfectly horizontal. It always flies with the nose pitched upwards. And that's referred to as the attitude of the aircraft. And I always think about, you know, gratitude, so being thankful, um, determines my attitude, and my attitude determines my altitude.
Yes.
If my attitude is wrong, I'm going to be going down. But if it's pointed upward, I'm going to be going upward. And so gratitude determines my attitude, and my attitude determines my altitude.
Yes. And that's my choice.
Yes.
That's my choice. And I understand that there's sad, sad stories and there's terrible life events happening in people's lives. I'm not diminishing that at all in any way, shape, or form. But certainly in my own life, I've practiced gratitude. And I know in my own life, I've had some fairly devastating events to deal with. And I've practiced gratitude. And it just, I think it frames your thinking, Brad. The minute I think of this as a gift, it's people will tell you, they'll say to me, "This has gone so badly wrong." I'll tell him, "It's a gift, you know, well done. Come on.
Mm.
That's fantastic news. What are we going to do about it? It's the obstacle is the way. It's overcoming things that causes me to grow." And so that's the beginning for me of breaking that fixed mindset. It says, yes, I can. Yes, I will. I can overcome this. I can break through this. I can.
And so this is a huge topic that we're going to continue to sort of unpack as these episodes progress. Um, but in the time that we've got left, how do we tie this all into? So we understand this idea of a growth mindset, how we can start to identify the mindset that we've got, how we can maybe start to change the mindset into pointed in a direction of something that we actually want rather than what we don't want. What do we mean when we say, am I the unclear in my business? How does that tie into what we've been talking about here?
Well, the thing that I've learned in life is that I am where I am because I brought myself here. My business is where it is because I've led it here. And it stops with me.
Mm,
It stops with me. You and I were discussing the business yesterday, and there are things that have happened in the business in terms of its growth and the progression that we're making. But I've led it here. You've helped me, but I made the calls and I made the decisions, and we're busy kind of developing our relationship and in terms of how the business is getting run, and we're starting to share that responsibility, which is amazing. But the fact of the matter is that I am responsible for where my business is. I've led it here. And
if my systems are unclear, I've led it here. If my processes are unclear or non-existent, I've led it here. If my marketing is unclear and my third-party marketing teams, SEO, paid search are struggling, it's probably because my marketing is unclear and I've led it there. I've allowed it to be unclear.
yeah, in fact, in my experience, I think twice before I tell the story. Okay, so I've thought the second time I'll tell the story. I I've learned this in my life in business, that the general problem-solving mode that people are in when something goes wrong is to take the hapless committer of the error and say something like, "You're an idiot. Why did you do something so like that? You know, it's not
Yeah,
rocket science. Are you stupid? Don't you know how this works?" And so the attack is first off on the perpetrator of the mistake. The thing we never discuss is process. Because why? Who's responsible for process? The leader.
yeah,
And if there's no process, the leader's responsible. The fault happened because of the leader, right?
yeah,
And in SenseMaker world, we inverted that. And so we said, in any environment that I'm in, if I at any point get into a discussion about error, about someone's got this wrong or done that or whatever the case may be, my first question is, show me the checklist,
mm,
show me the process. And we invert that in SenseMaker. We start with the process, accept responsibility as the leader for the fact that it's not there because I didn't make room for it to be there. Number one. Number two, did you know it was there? Yes or no? If I didn't, if my team member, my employee didn't know it was there, then there's a training issue. If they knew it was there, did you know how to work it? No, I didn't know how to work it. There's a training issue. And so there's so much we can do to correct the situation if we'll only be bold enough to accept with a growth mindset that I am where I am because I brought this business here. And then having discovered that there was no process and made one, having let everybody know that it's there, having taught everyone how to use it, okay, I'm in a slightly different position. Because now let's imagine Fred gets out of bed this morning and says, today I'm going to destroy my job, right? I'm going to go to work. I'm going to deliberately ignore the processes that are there. I'm going to deliberately ignore the instructions that I've had. And I'm going to deliberately do something that I know is going to deliberately land me in hot water.
yeah,
Fred's an idiot. Yeah. And
yeah,
and it's just that sense. And in my experience, I've yet to find an idiot.
mm,
They don't exist. People aren't like that. That's not what it's like. It's a part of the blame culture that's brought that kind of language into the world, and the lack of a growth mindset and a willingness to accept grow or go.
yeah. And so something that you touched on, and we'll cover this, go into detail on this in our next episode or future episodes, is this idea of getting knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And so I know from experience, it can feel sometimes like my head is so full. How do I learn something new? And so it's going to be interesting to unpack how we can start to increase our capacity to absorb new knowledge. But before we go there, if we were to summarize what we've learned and the conclusions that we've come to in this conversation, I'd do so like this, and then I'd be interested to get your take on it. So, sense check, right? Sense check myself. Grow or go. Use that to measure where I'm at, and that's a really good starting point. And so, if we default to our identify, clarify, learn, apply, how can we use that here? So I'd suggest identify, right? Identify the mindset that I have. Look for these outward reactions that I'm having to situations. Am I looking at mistakes as opportunity to learn? Am I looking at mistakes as a reason to give up? Clarify what is the information that I'm consuming. How might that be impacting the way that I view the world, the way that I view these situations? You know, how is that coming together? Am I willing to shift that? Learn. Carol Dweck, growth mindset book. That's a great example. This podcast, that's a great example. What else can I extract from my thinking in identify and clarify that might help me to identify an opportunity to learn those situations where failure happens and it doesn't go as we expect? What can I extract from that as a lesson? And then how can I apply all of those things? How can I apply what I've identified and what I've learned? That's my takeaway from this. What's yours?
Well, I completely agree with you, obviously, on identify, clarify, learn, apply. My takeaway would be that one of the signs of a closed or fixed mindset is when I try and go from identify to apply in one go.
Mm,
So I go down the left-hand side of the quadrant, and I don't take the time to clarify and learn. And I think that identify and apply is a reverse spiral. So where the sense maker spiral grows because I'm going around the quadrants, and you draw the spiral like a shell of a snail almost.
mm,
Identify and apply means that there's no clarity. And where there's no clarity, there can be no understanding. And where there's no clarity, there can be no learning
mm.
happens. And so I find myself shooting at the dark, hoping for the best. And if my strategy's got the word hope in it, it's not a strategy.
Very true. Very true. And so, from two humans sitting here who don't get everything right, who are learning ourselves still, who are challenged still personally
Daily.
and professionally with the same things that we're talking about here that you're experiencing, we want you to feel encouraged. It's a normal part of process, but it's how we decide to respond to those challenges and those obstacles that defines who we become and ultimately determines our destination. And so, if you are serious about your reason for starting, we encourage you to start implementing this idea of identify, clarify, learn, apply in your life, and start working through some of the points that we've covered in this conversation to start looking at your mindset. Is it growth mindset or is it fixed mindset? How serious are you about your reason for starting? We look forward to catching up with you in the next episode. See you soon.
And there endeth the lesson. If you found this episode helpful, why not complete the free assessment on our website at sensemaker.co.uk to uncover your unclears?
SenseMaker, your bridge between where you're stuck and your reason for starting.